Hi everyone and welcome back to another video for Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. In today's video we're going to be continuing the weapon guide series aimed at beginners to NGS, and today we're going to be looking at the Soaring Blades weapon, which is a weapon used by the Bouncer class. So I haven't covered any weapons by Bouncer yet, so this is the first time we'll be looking into it. So Bouncer is a hybrid class that alternates between melee and tech weapons. So Soaring Blades is the melee element of the class, so we're looking at that today. So what we'll do is we'll look at the basic moveset of Soaring Blades, then we'll look into the Photon Arts, and we'll also look at any skills that influence the weapon as well, and just see how it interacts. So as I mentioned, Soaring Blades is basically a dual sword weapon, and it's primarily good at taking out single targets, although there are some Photon Arts that affect groups as well. So this is the melee counterpart of the Bouncer class, and jet boots cover the tech element of the class as well. So first of all, we'll look at the basic moveset. So your basic attack moveset with the Soaring Blades is as follows. So you have a single hit, followed by another single hit, followed by a kind of range attack that hits twice. You can see it's quite a short combo, really. And that's your basic attack combination for the Soaring Blades. But next up, we'll look at the weapon action. So if you input the weapon action with no directional input, it might be hard to tell what happens there, but basically what this does, it gives you a very, very short shield, which is effectively like a parry frame. And then it fires some Photon bullets at the enemy. Photon blades. You can also aim where they go as well with the reticle. That's the weapon action. It's the same if you're moving as well. It's quite quick to spam it, so I think there is a very short cooldown of about a second. So you can't just spam it constantly, but it is quite a fast cooldown on it. So that's how the weapon action works. There is a little bit more to that, but we'll go into that. So next up, we'll look at the Photon Arts. So if we go to Dual Blades, or Soaring Blades as they're called in NGS, again, like most weapons in the game, it has 4 Photon Arts. So you have Destructive Stalk, Rampaging Harrier, Roaring Pheasant, and Raving Falcon. Now, the way these work, so the gimmick of Soaring Blades is that basically, if you press the PA button once, you'll do part of the Photon Art. And if you press it again, it will actually change the attack and do something else. So, although there are only four Photon Arts, they can differ by having like a second section to them usually. So we'll start off with Destructive Stalk. So it says, Soaring Blades Photon Art mows down nearby enemies and unleashes an additional Photon Blades attack. Pressing the PA button again during the attack will change it. So if you press it once, it does this like little dash forward, and then you spin the Photon Blades around you as well. So you've got the initial dash forward, which actually has quite a wide range, because if you notice, you actually spin the Photon Blades around your character while you dash forward. So it's actually really good for AoE directly around your character. If you press the Photon Art button again during the Photon Art, she jumps up in the air and does like a vertical slice with it instead. I should note that, so these Photon Arts are essentially split into 2 parts, and this is the same for most Bouncer Photon Arts. So you got the first part is the dash forward, and the second part is that second spin. Now, I can cancel out of this Photon Art into the vertical slice at any point during the first part, but I can't do it during the second part. So again, if I do it during the first part, it cancels out and does this instead. But if I try doing it during the second part, I'm pressing it there and it won't let me. So you can only cancel out of it from the first part into the alternate second part. So hopefully that makes sense. So again, if you only press the Photon Art button once, she does those 2 parts. But if you press the Photon Art button again during the first part, she'll do that vertical slice instead. So I hope you can kind of see how how the balance of Photon Arts work for Soaring Blades. It's the same with most of the Photon Arts as well. So next up, our next Photon Art is Rampaging Harrier. This unleashes a combo slash attack and then causes numerous Photon Blades to rain down on the enemy. Pressing the PA button again during the attack will change it. So again, without pressing anything else, she does quite a few slashes with the blades, and then she rains the Photon Blades down directly in front of her. So it actually has a little bit of range on the attack. But to be honest, you're not going to really use it for the range because obviously those first few slashes don't really have any. They have a little bit of extended range, but not much. But they certainly don't hit where the blades land. So once you're locked onto an enemy, those blades will land on where the enemy is. So you really want to be using it up close. Now, if you press the Photon Art button again during the first part, she will instead fire like a salvo of Photon Blades straight forward. That's actually really good for chasing down enemies that are either trying to run away or enemies that are at a bit of a distance that you're closing in on. Because if you're running it towards an enemy, you can go kind of chase after them with the blades. So it's quite a good Photon Art for closing distance in terms of keeping consistent pressure on while you're closing distance to an enemy. That's Rampaging Harrier. The next one is Roaring Pheasant. This releases a powerful strike after charging forward with vertical slashing attacks. Pressing the PA button again during the attack will change it. So, by just pressing it once, do this kind of meat spin. You can't control the direction on this to an well, what I mean by that is, if I don't press a directional input, she will go forwards. I can't really stop her from going forwards. I can't just do it in place for that part. If I hold, say, a direction, so say if I hold left, I can go left with it. And again, if I hold right, it's a ridiculous looking Photon Art, really. But you can see she does that spin, which does quite a few small hits, and then she ends it with one big slash that does decent damage. If you press the Photon Art button again during it, she then goes into another spin, which she spins backwards, and she stays in place while she does it. So you can see the second part, if you press the Photon Art button again, it basically allows you to stay in front of an enemy and just continually apply that damage to them. So it's actually not bad for, for closing distance on an enemy and then applying damage, because you can close in and then use that to do the focus damage on them. Yeah, it's an interesting Photon Art. It looks absolutely ridiculous, but it's actually not bad for applying damage. So next up, we have Raving Falcon. This is unleashes a monster shockwave along with a combo slash. Pressing the PA button again during the attack will change it. So without any extra button input, the standard Photon Art is basically just a lot of range slashes. So again, this is really good for taking out enemies that are a bit of a distance. So what you can see is, although that Soaring Blades is a melee weapon, it's actually really good at taking out enemies from range as well. Because a lot of the Photon Arts either fire Photon Blades or just fire energy out of the actual swords themselves. I mean, see, it's got quite a long range on it, really. So if you press the PA button during it to cancel it, she will do this dash forward and slash as well. So again, this is another way of closing distance. So with this one, you can actually hit enemies from a distance, then close in and get right up to the opponent. So you do this range damage, and then you can dash in. It's okay damage. It's nothing special, but it's more used for just getting in close, really. So what you could do is do this to get in close, and then hit with this. So it's a nice little combo chain, really. So that's the Photon Arts for Soaring Blade. So it's actually quite easy to use. The key thing you have to remember with Soaring Blades is that you always have the option to use. There's two different variants of the Photon Art. So again, you can use this if you want to, if enemies are all around you, or if you notice an enemy starting to fly into the air, you can then cancel it and go after them in the air. So there is quite a lot of versatility to it, and it is quite a useful weapon in terms of being able to change how it acts on the fly. The only real restriction with it is that you can't change to the alternate Photon Art once you start up the second part. You have to do it during the first part, so just bear that in mind. That's all of the Photon Arts. Now, next we're going to look at some of the skills that affect Soaring Blades. So in particular, we have an active skill called Fanatic Blade. So this increases the frequency of your Photon Blades for a set time in exchange for lower potency. Can only be used with Soaring Blades. So you saw your Photon Blade that it's referring to as your weapon action. This that I covered earlier. Now, if I just change this, for example, and add on Photon Blade, I'll also add that one on as well, because we'll cover that in a minute as well. So, Fanatic Blade, again, as standard, your Photon Blade, shoot this fast and shoot that many. If I use Fanatic Blade, see, it now shoots a lot more, and I can basically spam them. So it shoots more blades, I can spam them a lot faster. The downside is they do less damage. The benefit of doing this is, to be honest, overall the damage is probably still better anyway, because you are firing so many and a lot faster. But these Soaring Blades actually restore your PP a little bit as well, so you can actually refill your PP really quickly from that as well. That's actually a really useful active skill. There is quite a long cooldown on it though, it's around about a minute cooldown, so just bear that in mind. Next up, we have Fanatic Blade Augment. This increases the number of Photon Blades fired while Fanatic Blade is active. So I think as standard, Fanatic Blade will just increase the frequency that you can do the Photon Blades, but it won't fire extra ones. Mine's firing extra ones because I've got this Fanatic Blade Augment as well. And then Photon Blade PP Recovery. Increases PP recovery amount when you land a normal attack on an enemy struck by a Photon Blade. So the way this works is, when you attack an opponent with the Photon Blades, what will happen is if you hit a target with them, you actually see that the Photon Blade will actually embed in the enemy for a few seconds. If you then hit an enemy that's got a Photon Blade embedded in them, you'll recover extra PP back. So it is a good way of getting your PP back quickly. I can't remember if the actual blades themselves restore PP or not, but they give you a means to get your PP back by attacking an enemy that has the blades embedded. So obviously you'll get the normal PP recovery anyway from just attacking an enemy, because that happens regardless. You know, any weapon that melee attacks an enemy or uses a range attack will always gain PP back if it's a normal attack. But with Bouncer, you'll get that bonus PP back if the enemy has the Photon Blade embedded in it as well. So next up, we have Blade Arts Parry. So this negates enemy attacks just once when you press the weapon action button while unleashing a Photon Art. So the one benefit of the parry with Soaring Blade, which is this, again, it fires the blades, but it also does have that parry shield as well, is that you can actually use it mid-Photon Art as well. So basically the way it works is it won't actually show up, but if an enemy goes to attack you and you hit that parry just as you're about to get hit, you can actually parry during a Photon Art, which is something that a lot of classes can't do. With a lot of classes, if you're in the middle of doing a Photon Art, you're kind of locked into it. But with Bouncer, you can do that, but you can only do it once. You can't just keep on spamming it during the same Photon Art. So next thing is we have Pinion Blade. So Pinion Blade is an active skill, and what this does, it unleashes a powerful forward slash by expending a gauge built up via attacking. So as you attack with Soaring Blades, you'll build up this gauge. It might be hard to see, but so on the Pinion Blade icon, which is this one here, if I move it out the way, you might be able to see, it might be hard to see, but just above it there is a little gauge, and as you attack enemies, that gauge will fill. Once it's full, you can use this active skill. It's essentially just a big attack that does a ton of damage, and then once you've used it, that gauge will reset. So it's just a nice sort of burst damage that you get every so often just by continuing to attack with Soaring Blades. But there's not a whole lot to say about it really. Just does nice damage, but you can't use it that often. So you just want to use it. You probably want to use that when the boss gets downed, or if a core gets exposed or something. Just anytime you want to get big damage in quickly. So that's kind of one of your main sources of damage with Soaring Blades, but only when it's available. So next up, we have Blade Arts Parry Counter Edge. So this is unleash a counter when you successfully negate an attack with Blade Arts Parry. So again, Blade Arts Parry was this one where if you parry during a Photon Art, you can parry once during a Photon Art. What the counter edge allows you to do is then counter from that. So you can use a Photon Art, parry an attack, and then counter that attack during the Photon Art, which is pretty crazy really, because a lot of weapons don't allow you to do that. Now, I will say there is a big disadvantage to this parry, and it's that a lot of the parries in NGS or counters in NGS are very, very easy to do. The timing window for the Blades one seems a lot tighter, and I don't find it that reliable to use. The timing is quite strict for it. So I honestly generally don't use it very often. I find it quite an awkward parry to use, and it's just the timing window is just quite narrow on it, and you will find that you will mess it up quite often. If you can get good at it, it's a really, really good way of maintaining pressure because you can just continue to counter while you're doing Photon Arts. But the timing window is very strict on it, so just be aware of that if you are trying to use Soaring Blades. I wouldn't rely on the parry too much. Next up is Photon Blade Protect. So this is negates enemy attacks when you use a weapon action. So what this is, you can see that when I use the weapon action, it puts this little shield up around me. So that shield is from this Photon Blade Protect. So if you don't have those other skills, all your weapon action will do is fire a few Photon Blades. You won't get the shield, and you won't get the increased damage or anything either. All you'll get is the Photon Blades firing forward. With Photon Blade Protect, you can see it puts a little orb shield up around my character very briefly. And again, it is a very, very tight window. So again, try not to rely on it too much because the window is very tight for it. But it just gives you another way of countering or parrying an attack. Well, I think with this one, it doesn't actually parry or counter; it just negates it. With Soaring Blades, your parry and counters comes from doing it during a Photon Art. So next up, we have... that's actually it for Blades, actually. A lot of the skills for Bouncer are actually tied to Jet Boots. Jet Boots are quite a complicated weapon that has a lot of active and passive skills. With Blades, it's quite simple overall. Essentially, you just want to be maintaining pressure, just continually using your Photon Arts, just being aware of which variant of your Photon Art you want to use, depending on the situation. So again, if you were fighting a group of enemies and you were starting to get surrounded, you could use this to take care of them. Alternatively, if something started flying away from you during it, you can then chase them with this. So you just want to be aware of that and just adjust what variant of the Photon Art you want to use, depending on the situation. Overall, apart from that, it's quite a simple weapon to use. You just want to make sure that you use Fanatic Blade whenever possible to make sure that you're impaling the enemies with the Photon Blades, and then you can use that to get more PP back, which allows you to use your Photon Arts more often. And just make sure that you're using Pinion Blade whenever you get an opportunity to. So I think that's more or less it for Soaring Blades. It is, as I say, quite a simple weapon. The main difficulty with it is learning when to use which variant of the Photon Art, but also learning to use the parry effectively as well, because it is quite difficult to get used to. I'll leave this there for now, though. Any comments, just leave them in the comments below, and I will try and answer whatever I can. If you've got any questions or anything, just leave them down below. Or if you've got any suggestions on things you'd like me to cover, either for NGS or for other Phantasy Star games, just leave them in the comments, and I will try and take things into consideration when I'm planning new videos. We are moving to 2 uploads a week now, so we do 1 upload midweek and 1 upload at the end of the week, usually on a Sunday on the weekend, and usually around about Wednesday during the week. If you want to keep up to date, you can keep up to date with me on Twitter or X at section_Skyline. And again, if you've got anything you want to ask, feel free to hit me up on there and I will try and answer what I can. But for the meantime, I'll leave this one here. Any questions, leave them below. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.